Hey, this is Sirius TV from Supermarket, and we're here with some of the guys from the Naked, a project. And do you guys want to tell us something about this project? What is it, and how did you guys get started?
Yeah. Well, I'm Johan Gustavson from 646.
I'm Jeroen van Hulst from Pamphlet magazine.
So it started about 4 years ago when the situation in The Hague in the Netherlands, there was a lot of positive things happening in the city. A lot of places were renovated thanks to EU funding, and the city was giving a big push in the city for contemporary art, especially the artist-run spaces. And at one point, Rob Klein, a man, decided, let's have dinner with some of these people that are running spaces. So we had dinner and said, how can we together make this even stronger? And then we decided there should be a major event in some way, and that started a long discussion, and that became more complicated and more complicated. Because we wanted to make an international exhibition, and then the discussion started about what is international, and also from artist-run spaces mentality, because we all come from sort of an artist-run space. So that led to discussions, a lot of discussions, and in the end we wanted to sort of try to find out what is happening around the world in the artist-run spaces. So we started contacting our network, because together we had quite a large network of...
How many people were you at that point who was having these discussions?
Then we're 5 at the moment. We're just 4 left now.
Okay.
Again, moved to Belgium. He's still kind of part of it, but not active. So we started writing our network around the world, asking them to write about their social, political context that they work in, and from there out proposed 3 artists. So in the end, we're trying to build up what is a research phase still, where we're trying to gather information from all over the world, why something is exciting. I mean, I know Iranian artists, but I know them from seeing them at the Venice Biennale or the big shows, but I know we looked at ourselves, like in The Hague, for example. I know most of the artists, and there's a few artists that are amazing, but you'll never see them in Copenhagen, or you'll never see them in Manifesto, or the kind of New York, the kind of museums that we normally meet other cultures and contemporary art.
So it was a platform where you can experience artists that you won't otherwise see in the big institutions mostly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's people that has been proposed that are also in some of the big institutions, but most of them are less known. I normally don't know the people that are being proposed from Singapore or Montreal.
Plus you get an idea of not just, I think, who's practicing art, but how it is practiced, because with this alternative space that we look for, I think you find that all spaces that are alternative or independent, they try to rebel against things, to alternate from something institutionalized. But this institution seems to be different everywhere. So the definition of what is artist-run and what is independent changes as well across the map.
Yeah.
So it's also to show the different methods, like around how people
how subtle some things can be. If you look at the map, like a vast area of Asia, and there's only one little space there, and you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why is there only one? Or at least why do we only know about one? And so that you get a kind of a global street view of a lot of different local scenes.
And there is a physical map on the web page as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
It functions the same way as Google Maps works. You can zoom in on Stockholm, for example, and you see here there's these alternative spaces available. So there's this map function, and the other part is more like a blog, where people post, and sometimes quite extended texts about Turkey, or not Turkey, but more a city then, so Istanbul, for example, or Ankara, and the scene there, why they've chosen these people, what the political system, social system that they, the context that they work in, and then, in certain areas, there's certain countries, there's issues that has to be spoken about there that is maybe less relevant somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And it is also becomes complicated about measuring standards. What is good in my eyes? Some things are incredibly outdated in another country sometimes.
So you get the cultural background from the places, so you understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
That's what they're writing about as well on the webpage.
Also, yeah. We were at Marrakesh Biennial to present the Naked last year, and there was a performance by a very young Moroccan artist, and she did sort of a Jackson Pollock kind of performance on the street, on the Yamal Fnal, the big square, where it had the snake dancers and stuff. And that was something that, maybe here in Stockholm or in the Netherlands would say, we've seen that 60 years ago, so it would be very relevant in our context. But there it was, I think, 150 people constantly looking for 40 minutes, really experience something. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, so maybe for me, it doesn't have a quality, but for an audience there, it really has.
It's really interesting that you can show that.
Yeah, and I think that it becomes very interesting to speak about what is quality, in an art historical context, it's maybe not so fascinating, but for the situation and context there, it's incredibly important that.
And the same can be said about the only artist rooms, or only independent space in Kazakhstan, for instance. A lot of the galleries there are either state-owned or state-imposed, they were traditional art, yet this space, if you look at it objectively, you think, well, this doesn't resemble anything what we're used to hear of independent art spaces that can actually experiment. It's just paintings on the wall. But it's a guy that studied in Russia and saw the type of trend there and wanted to bring it, a type of openness, and wanted to bring that to Kazakhstan. It proved to be very difficult. But now since 2008, he has his own independent space. Whether you agree with its program doesn't matter, but it's independent. He tries to venture out in a way that makes a lot of sense there, regardless if it would make sense here or not. And again, that's the difference between what institution do you alternate from. You can say here an institution that you alternate from is museum art or whatever, galleries and typical gallery art. But there, sometimes it's a whole political system that you have to sort of alternate from.
That makes it very limited what you can bring.
Incredibly important to understand, try and understand certain differences, that certain measures. I think it's, speaking about this before, that you get a lot of things can fall under an umbrella of independent or alternative art spaces, but background of individual artists always play a big role in how they're represented. So let's say if I'm, as a Dutch artist, asked to do a show in London, I'll be there representing my work, whatever that entails. But were I a Syrian artist now, I would be representing involuntarily, being an ambassador to the situation, the elephant in the room, which is an unfair comparison. And I think by mapping out activities in places that you wouldn't really see otherwise, you can get a context of actually what is going on there on a street level instead of our expectation.
Instead of in a big global, what are the issues in that area that you want to educate.
And we always see when politically interesting or economically something is developing, like Chinese art, or after '91, all the Baltic countries became, a lot of the Baltic artists that are interesting or